Hey everybody, welcome to History University. My name is Tom and I will be your educator for this video. This video is Chapter 2 of the Cognitive Revolution series, so make sure you check out Chapter 1 if you want to be up to date. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Chapter 2, The Tree of Knowledge. About 100,000 years ago, Sapiens made their first attempt out of Africa, but it appears they did not make it far into the Levant before being pushed back by Neanderthals. The fossil evidence shows a slow push out of Africa, but ultimately a return. We should note that Sapiens 100,000 years ago looked exactly like modern Sapiens. Their brain power wasn't quite there yet, but if you put a modern day human next to a well-groomed Sapien from 100,000 years ago, they would be indistinguishable. Now, if you try to teach them mathematics or a new language, the Sapien from 100,000 years ago would lag behind in understanding. The real change in knowledge for Sapiens occurs between 70,000 years ago and 30,000 years ago. At this point, we start to see Sapiens invent boats, lamps, and bows and arrows. There's also evidence to support that these Sapiens had their own religion, commerce, and social stratification. This time period of advancement is known as the Cognitive Revolution. Harari's explanation for the Cognitive Revolution is something he calls the Tree of Knowledge. A key factor in this tree of knowledge is the language that our species uses. And by language, I'm not talking about English or French. I'm talking about our sophisticated ways of communicating. Harari claims many animals have languages, like apes and monkeys, but they are very simplistic with what they convey. Zoologists have discovered that green monkeys communicate different sounds for sayings like, "Careful, there is an eagle," and "Careful, there is a lion." Zoologists recorded the sounds that the green monkeys make and replayed it to them. When they played the "Careful, there is an eagle" sound, all the monkeys looked up to survey for an aerial threat. When the researchers played the "Careful, there is a lion" sound, all the monkeys immediately scrambled up a tree. Like most social animals, monkeys communicate with each other, but their language does not allow for specific messages. The Sapiens language allows us to ingest, store, and communicate a prodigious amount of information about the surrounding world. The early Homo sapiens could walk down to a river to get water. They can notice a lion on the south end of the river moving north with 4 other lions. One of those sapiens can go back to the tribe and report that he saw a lion near the river with 4 other lions. This is not the type of communication that the monkeys use. A monkey would only be able to communicate that there was a lion in a threatening position, and it would effectively sound the alarms to the other monkeys. Sapiens are capable of reporting the position of a lion along with 4 other lions and the direction that they were heading in, all without making noise that alerts his fellow tribesmen. Harari calls this the lion near the river theory for an explanation to our complex language. Harari also presents the gossip theory to explain our complex language. Harari also proposes our language developed in this way because cooperation is key for our survival and reproduction. It is important for an individual to know where a pride of lions are for the sake of his own survival, but it is also important for him to warn his fellow tribesmen about the threat, so they aren't wiped out by the lion. The use of language through the gossip theory isn't about warning others. Instead, it is about interpersonal relationships. One of the main ways we communicate with each other today is through gossip. Sure, history professors discuss Napoleon when they're on their lunch break, but they are also prone to talk about extramarital affairs that are happening in the history department. It is very important for Sapiens to have a sense of the people around them and if they should feel welcomed or threatened by those people. An extramarital affair may or may not be true. It could completely be fiction, but fiction enables Sapiens to imagine things not as an individual, but as a group. Every member of the faculty can conceive of the notion of an extramarital affair, even if it's true or not. This is one of the greatest things about Sapiens. They're able to hold ideas and beliefs that may or may not be true, but hold them collectively as a group, rather than just an individual. As a result of that gossip about an extramarital affair, those faculty members have become closer and gained more cohesion. Before we dive in and look at how important gossip is for the social structure of Sapiens, we must first look at our chimpanzee cousin. The chimpanzee has a hierarchical social structure. There is a dominant member of chimpanzee clans, and for simplicity's sake, let's call him the alpha male. Although that's not exactly what he is, we should just be on the same page here. The other chimpanzees will bow down to the alpha male, in a similar way that Sapiens would bow down to a king. The alpha male of chimpanzees will strive for harmony among the chimps. If two start to fight, the alpha male will intervene. He will also hoard up the most desired food for himself and prevent lower class chimps from mating with the females. Chimpanzees will often compete for the alpha male position, and they do so by forming coalitions with each other. These groups of supporters are formed when chimpanzees come in close contact with each other. The chimpanzee may hug, kiss, groom, or do favors for another chimpanzee. This isn't far off of how politicians go out and communicate with neutral voters in order to boost trust with their fellow sapiens. The alpha male for chimpanzees is not always the strongest male. Instead, he is the one with the greatest coalition of chimpanzees supporting him. Members of these coalitions have been observed to spend more time with each other, share food with each other more often, and go out of their way to help one another. There is typically a limit to the size a group of chimpanzees can reach without going crazy. Most chimpanzees are found to be living in a band of about 25 to 50 chimps. Rarely has there been groups of over 100 chimpanzees observed. Sociologists have noted that the natural size of group for sapiens is around 150. Most people can neither intimately know nor gossip effectively about more than 150 humans. While we may only be able to connect intimately to 150 humans at a time, our society has managed to operate with millions of people. So what allowed humans to come together so well? Harari makes the claim that any large-scale cooperation, whether a modern state, a medieval church, an ancient city, or an archaic tribe, is rooted in common myths that only exist in people's collective imagination. The concept of a country is a modern myth. You could have two Serbian soldiers that have never met each other, but both fight for the same idea of a Serbian nation. Despite not even knowing each other, they both identify this as their nation's flag, and this piece of land as their country's borders, and they both have a notion of what Serbia is without even discussing it with each other. This is what Harari means by large-scale cooperation is rooted in common myth that exists in people's collective imagination. Those Serbians had a shared concept of Serbia that was rooted in both of their heads. That same notion is also rooted in the rest of the Serbian army. Harari explains that our modern corporations are also fictitious. Let's take a look at Coca-Cola. The brand is everywhere. You've seen the advertisements and you've seen the product countless times. The company has tens of thousands of employees working together in different countries. All of those employees come together to help Coca-Cola sell billions of dollars worth of products each year. So, does Coca-Cola exist? There are plenty of bottles of Coca-Cola, but none of them are actually the company. If every single bottle of Coca-Cola disappeared, the company Coca-Cola would still exist. Coca-Cola owns machinery, factories, and buildings. They are much more than just a product. If all of Coca-Cola's factories were destroyed, and all of their employees randomly disappeared, would Coca-Cola still exist? Even at that point, Coca-Cola still exists, since the shareholders technically still own the company. This doesn't mean that Coca-Cola is immortal, but technically it could go out of business, fire all of its employees, sell off all of its properties and shares, and essentially cut ties from the physical world. So does it still exist if it has no physical ties to the world? Well, according to lawyers, it does. This is what lawyers call legal fiction. It's something you can point at since there's no physical object or being, but it has certain rights like humans. Corporations are allowed to own bank accounts, buy property, pay taxes, and even be sued. Once Coca-Cola goes out of business, we will still have this imagined reality of what Coca-Cola was. Harari points out that this imagined reality isn't a lie. We can have this concept of Coca-Cola without lying about it. We are constructing an imagined reality and image of Coca-Cola that we can all share. A lie would be telling the tribe you saw a lion near the river when you actually saw nothing. An imagined reality elicits real force in the world and can genuinely feel real, despite having no actual presence. For the last 70,000 years or so, sapiens have evolved in a dual reality. They can process both the objective world, like the rivers and mountains, as well as the imagined reality of Google, Coca-Cola, and a concept of a nation like the United States of America. And the greatest thing about these realities is that they can change overnight. In 1789, over the course of a few months, the French populace went from believing in the divine right of rule to believing in the concept that people should rule the country and have their own sovereignty without a monarch. Believing in the idea of ruling without a king and overthrowing a government could only be done with the ability to cooperate with one another. The sapiens' DNA let them create rapid social change with a collective belief in a different social structure, a social structure that was an imagined reality between all of them. The behavior of social animals is largely determined by their DNA. Of course, environment plays a factor, but in order for there to be social change, there will probably have to be some form of genetic change. Regardless of environment, the chimpanzee forms this hierarchical structure with the alpha male. The bonobo is the most closely related species to the chimpanzee, but their social structures are more egalitarian based. Male and female bonobos share more equality, and in most cases, the female has dominance in bonobo society. Conversely, chimpanzees are always trying to find this alpha male. Currently, female chimpanzees would not have the ability to observe bonobo society and then go on to fight for equal rights against the alpha male. Neither do the weaker chimps gather in an assembly, like the Frenchmen did in 1789, and demand that the alpha male give up their power and give equal rights to the people. There is something missing in the chimpanzee's DNA that prevents them from having a social structure that favors a democracy, so to say. The early humans seem to be missing similar DNA. This is why it took humans hundreds of thousands of years to take their first step out of Africa. 2 million years ago, Homo erectus became the first human due to its genetic adaptations. Shortly after the genetic adaptation in Homo erectus, we start to see the creation of stone tools. This new adaptation led to new abilities, but for the next 2 million years, we see almost no genetic change in Homo erectus. And as a result, there is no adaptation in the tools that the Homo erectus used for nearly 2 million years. The brilliance of sapiens is that they are able to transmit new behaviors to future generations without a genetic component. No other species is observed changing their social structure so frequently. Imagine that you were born in Germany in 1900. For your younger years, you will recall living under Kaiser Wilhelm of House Hohenzollern. By your early adult years, you're living in the Weimar Republic. Then suddenly the Third Reich comes around. By the time that you're middle age, communists occupy East Germany, and when you are in your 80s, you see Germany finally unified again. If you were that German, you would have lived in 5 different social political environments. Sapiens have the ability to adapt and change social structure unlike any other species. Harari theorizes that our ability to change social structure might be unique to the sapiens and is not found in any other species of human. Sapien sites from 30,000 years ago in Europe contain shells from scattered parts of the Mediterranean and Atlantic coasts. The Neanderthals lacked comparable trade goods, most likely because they could not conceptualize an imagined reality where shells have any actual value. Another example that strengthens the theory that sapiens were trading with each other is the discovery of obsidian tools found on New Ireland in the South Pacific. There are actually no natural obsidian deposits on the island, but there are on New Britain, which is 250 kilometers away. This leads many to believe that there could have been trading posts between early sapiens on the 2 islands. If these archaic sapiens were exchanging obsidian and seashells, what prevented them from exchanging knowledge? Early sapiens could have taught each other how to use slaughtering grounds, where they would chase animals into a narrow gorge and then trap them. Different sapien tribes could cooperate and merge together to team up for a big hunt. They could also trade ideas about how to build stronger huts, or what animals provide for the warmest clothing. Thousands of years of knowledge and technology from one tribe could instantly be transmitted to another. This is the tree of knowledge. With new trade works developing, new knowledge is being expanded upon and talked about and traded with and adapted on to create humans finding more efficient and effective ways to hunt, build, adapt, and expand. Harari then reminds us, the most powerful thing about our communication isn't our ability to communicate complex messages, but our ability to communicate fictitious tales that create an imagined reality. Join us next time for Chapter 3, A Day in the Life of Adam and Eve. In this chapter, I'll talk about what our ancestors were like right before they decided to settle down and create society. We will focus on the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, along with early religion, wars, relationships, and more. Tune in next time to learn about the millennia between the cognitive revolution and the agricultural revolution. Thank you guys very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you can, and most importantly, have a good day.